talk about the Journal Sentinel's big report about the racial gap in traffic stops in Milwaukee. Basically, I'm just going to break this down for you. They're saying that blacks in this city are more likely, 7 times more likely to be pulled over than whites. Wow. Hispanics are 5 times more likely to be pulled over than whites. This is looking at just the raw numbers. Of course, Chief Flynn is coming out and saying that they're targeting areas where there's higher crime, so he thinks that the numbers, you know, that's kind of skewing the numbers. And then the sheriff came out and wrote a very pointed letter to the to Ben Poston, who had written this article, basically saying, my reaction is BS. But he said it is the whole word. Okay.
This is from Sheriff Clark?
This is from Sheriff Clark, which he wasn't mentioned so much in the article other than to say that Milwaukee and Dane County and the Wisconsin State Troopers numbers were much lower than Milwaukee police.
Than Milwaukee,
It was just like 1 or 2 sentences from what I picked up. So he was reacting to that. And then his whole letter is a link on JS Online if you want to go and read it. But basically he's saying there is no way that you can take this data and break it down to say what an officer, you'd have to know everything about the officer, you'd have to know everything about, to be able to say that it's racially motivated.
Right, because that's what he's calling the baloney on, because the facts are facts, the numbers are numbers. He can't really call.
Thank you. And I mean, and people of color know that it's a major, you know, that it's a crime driving while black.
It's not literally, it just feels like that.
But that is the punchline, DWB, I've heard that before.
But you know, and it's interesting because, and I've had this conversation with non-black people who are shocked, appalled, surprised, and then try to minimize the situation, but it's very, very real. And what that does to your psyche, being always on guard, it's interesting of the things that that I was taught and told growing up is how to conduct yourselves, to be careful. I take it back to the conversation we had about eating in the supermarket. And as a little black girl, I didn't have that option because I could be accused of stealing. And so I love the fact that Journal Sentinel is bringing this out. It is no surprise to me. I think it definitely is racial profiling. Sheriff Clark is right in that you would have to know what the police officers are thinking and where they're coming from. But I say, growing up in this world, and especially this city, with all of the stereotypical information and belief systems that are in place, when you look at crime or potential drugs or just anything going down, sadly, often it is looked upon young black men and in those communities. I was reading also about that they do this in terms of like drug trafficking and the profile of that. But the reality is they let a lot of non-black or people of color criminals go because they're not looking at them.
Not looking at them.
But now this is interesting, and obviously you have a different perspective than anyone else sitting up here, so not to discount that. But unless, have you read this entire article? There are stats and figures and numbers, and they go back, and it's very detailed. That was laid out. Of course, you can read it online as well, JS Online as well. And again, Chief Flynn pointing to the fact that these are high crime neighborhoods. They tend to have minority populations, higher minority populations. So there's a lot of figures in here, and so that's what I see when the graphs and everything like that. There are a lot of things. I mean, to make a blanket statement, period.
That what they found, they did not find more weapons or drugs necessarily by the numbers. It's just that that's who they're targeting. And I will say targeting.
And he went on to say they have to have more aggressive strategies in high crime areas, which again, unfortunately, have a higher number of minorities. So there's
because if people in those communities were asked, do they want to be safe, and that's what it takes to make them safe. Of course, the people would say, yes, they do want to be safe.
Of course.
True.
But I still say that you can't get in the mind of somebody and know exactly where they're coming from. And we all have belief systems, some that we're aware of, many that we are not, that we act upon, that target people of color, and it's unfortunate.
Well, the chief is making it clear that they are targeting certain neighborhoods, and if you were to run the numbers, clearly, as you pointed out, those numbers are higher with ethnic minorities in general, particularly, unfortunately, because, you know, of the way everything breaks down with the economy, unfortunately, a higher number of African Americans in those communities. So if you are upping the amount of coverage
Yes.
in those neighborhoods, you're going to see disproportionate
But
right
people
away.
of color will tell you you don't have to be in the hood to get stopped by the
Right.
cops.
Now, see, that's where you start to venture into the motivation category.
Exactly.
Yeah, now
when you start to
these-
go,
Right.
when you start to feel that way.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but-
wondering if
yeah.
sometimes you can't even see the driver when you make that first stop, and you're looking for taillights that are out, you know, whatever the cops have to end up looking for, license plates that aren't there, you know, that kind of thing before you even pull them over.
Like nighttime stops, how do you even know?
Yeah, you don't even know. I'm not saying, I totally,
And, you know, and I understand that you would have all those questions. I have a very different reality.
Right.
Reality, not suspicion. Reality.
But there, again, are numbers and charts and a lot of studies here. It's easy. And you always tell us, don't
Yeah.
make a blanket statement. So
and I also
you
say,
do,
you know,
yeah.
studies can reveal whatever you want
As
to
they can
them
with
to
politics
reveal.
and everything else.
Precisely.
Right.
But
So-
driving while black is a different kind of thing.
But it's a good article. Read the article for
Yeah,
yourself because
do,
it's
do.
interesting,
Yeah.
very detailed.
it is.
All right, also in the bubbler today, can we